And remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in a meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that might affect our community for generations to come. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business tonight is swearing in our newly appointed member, Saida Said.
I, Sayada Sayed, do solemnly swear that I faithfully executed the duty of office of Place 3, Planning and Zoning Commission, City of Colleyville, of the State of Texas. And I will do the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of the state. So help me God. Thank you.
Congratulations and welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Next order of business will be citizen comment time for any items that are not on the agenda. I'm going to open the public hearing. Please come forward. No one's coming forward. I have no cards. Public hearing is closed. Next, we have to do a bit of housekeeping, so please bear with us during this. We have the minutes from September 10th, September 24th work session, September 24th commission meeting, and October 8th commission meeting. I'd ask that one of my fellow commissioners motion to approve if there's not any comments or changes at this time to the minutes.
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Moore? Aye. Commissioner Said?
Aye.
Commissioner Mattison? Absent. Commissioner Cook?
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel?
Aye.
Commissioner Elms? Absent. Motion passes 4-0.
Commissioner Holt.
Did I miss you? You off of that? I apologize.
That's okay.
Commissioner Holt, aye.
Aye.
That
They still want
passes.
you.
Right?
They still want you here.
Yeah, I know. All right. Moving on to our first agenda item, item 4A.
3A.
Consideration of a rezoning from CC-1 to PUD-C for auto and truck rentals enterprise on track 2C03, abstract 206, in the BBB and C RY survey, located at 4917 Colleyville Boulevard. This is case ZC19-012. Staff?
Thank you. Ben Briner, Director of Community Development. As you stated, this is a request to rezone from our CC1 district to the PUDC, Plan Unit Development Commercial District, specifically to allow for an auto and truck rental use on this property at 4917 Colleyville Boulevard. Here's an aerial photo of the site. Many of you might recall this is the old location of the Sonic restaurant. It's been vacant for several years now, and as I stated, Enterprise Rent-A-Car is desiring to locate a standalone business use here at this location. The current zoning is the CC1 Village Retail District. This zoning district does not allow for the automobile rental and truck rental use. There are several districts that authorize this use with a special use permit. Rather than requesting one of those districts with the special use permit, they felt that a better option would be to rezone to the Plan Unit Development Commercial District to maintain the CC1 uses, but then add this specific use as a permitted use to this property. The future land use map does designate this as part of the Colleyville Boulevard corridor, and this is where we anticipate most of our commercial, office, and retail uses. And so it would be an appropriate use along the boulevard in the right location. The black circle that you see there does identify it as a sales tax preferred intersection. Here's a pictometry photo of the site. This is looking east. This is, as I stated again, the old location for the Sonic restaurant. They would demolish most of what you see there and redevelop with a new standalone building. This is the site plan that is being proposed, or the zoning exhibit. And you can see a small building there at the front corner with the parking that wraps around along the south side and the east side. They have provided some elevations. So it is a combination of a stone veneer with some stucco appearance as well. And they provided elevations that show some of the proposed landscaping and without, to give you some perspective with that. Here's a floor plan. So again, it is a standalone use for their business. They do have a covered patio, which they will use for a wash and detail area. And that's there on the back side, the east side, labeled here as covered patio. And here's their landscape plan. So they will also provide landscaping as required by our land development code. As part of this package, they do have the existing drainage and proposed drainage identified as well. With the wash area and detail area, they will be required to capture all of that water and make sure it runs through the appropriate filters before it gets discharged into the city storm sewer system. So as far as the draft Plan Unit Development language, ordinance language, so again, this would be to allow for automobile and truck rental. They're building totaling approximately 1,602 square feet. They are proposing to maintain the CC1 Village Retail Zoning District, but then adding the auto and truck rental use as a permitted use to this site. As far as the building designs, those images that were shown before will also be attached to this ordinance, and so they will have to substantially conform to those elevations, both the design and the materials. The landscaping as depicted on that landscaping plan. There are a few modifications or where they don't quite meet the standard regulations for the CC1 district. First is in regard to the setbacks to the front and street side property lines. The requirement is for 40 feet in commercial districts. They're proposing a setback of 20.71 feet along Colleyville Boulevard and then 15 feet along Old Glade Road. Also, as part of this, they will limit it to what I'll call passenger vehicles. So no box trucks, trailers, boats, or other commercial vehicles will be rented at this location. And then finally, with the parking, they would have a total of 28 parking spaces for this business. That is more than what our code requires, but we felt that that was an important thing to add in there to identify the parking as shown on that plan. That would allow for their inventory as well as for any customers that show up. We did send our notices out to surrounding property owners within 500 feet, and we have not received any responses back formally for this site at this time for this request. Staff does recommend approval. It does conform to the future land use plan and the stated goals described in the Destination Colleyville plan, and it does also conform to recent development trends on surrounding properties and along Colleyville Boulevard. And with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Just, well, the section in front of the building facing Colleyville Boulevard and the section facing Old Glade Road, that's just going to be landscaping. Looks like there's
That is
just a
correct.
small sidewalk coming from the parking lot to the front of the building, and or where will people enter the building?
Yeah, so the entrance will be really on that Colleyville Boulevard side. The sidewalks that you see will be in the street right-of-way areas, but you're right, all of that area, really in that top corner, will be landscaping, except for that sidewalk that connects from the Colleyville Boulevard linear sidewalk up to the building front.
And one other question that I just thought of, Old Glade Road, if you go back to the picture of it,
The aerial photo?
yeah, the aerial photo. There's, you know, no, yeah, that's fine. If you look where Old Glade Road and Colleyville Boulevard meet, it kind of widens out, so there's a distinct turn in and a distinct turn out onto, you know, turning right onto Colleyville Boulevard. Are there any plans to change Old Glade Road and the way it's designed as part of the Colleyville Boulevard construction?
That's a good question. I did not look at that plan, so I don't know if they were going to modify that right in, right out design, is what I call that, where it forces you to turn right in and turn right out. We will have medians along this stretch, so we may not need that little interior island after it's all said and done. We would be forced to turn right in and right out anyway.
Yeah,
But I'm not 100% sure if they've even proposed anything for that.
yeah, I think where my head was at more of a, you know, the setback, you know, allowing that shorter setback from 40 feet to just over 20 feet. Old Glade Road is, you know, where people would be turning right. I guess I was more, you know, in my head wondering, is there going to be any issue being able to see oncoming traffic when you're turning right on the Colleyville Boulevard? I don't see one now, the way Old Glade Road is set up, right? But if it were to narrow and get closer to where Enterprise is, you know, proposing they go, then, you know, potentially there might be. So that's all. And if Old Glade Road isn't really changing, and it still is a very, you know, wide right turn only, well, then that's not an issue for me.
Yeah, I know once it gets beyond just the intersection itself, there are no plans to widen that stretch. So I believe what we see there is the ultimate dimension as far as the width is concerned.
Yeah, I just want to make sure when people are, you know, looking left to turn right, there's nothing obstructing their view potentially.
There should not be, and in fact, a lot of that pavement that you see there today will go away. That will turn into the front landscape area right in front of the building, if that makes sense.
And as far as that landscaping goes, does the city have input on that? Is it all going to be pretty low, or?
So if it's within the visibility triangle, they do have to limit it to no more than 30 inches in height. And then for trees or taller vegetation, they have to trim it up to a 7-foot height.
Okay,
So between 30 inches and 7 feet, it has to be open.
all right. And then questions I also have related to this. Is this at all supporting Enterprise operations at DFW, or is it completely separate? I guess that's something, question for them.
I'm taking a guess. My gut, I think it's probably separate. They have an existing location here, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of where the Whole Foods
Yeah, yeah.
development is. They'll be relocating from that site to this.
Yeah, this is just a larger site, so are there
Right.
larger plans for it? Or is it still like a neighborhoods, I guess is one question I have.
Yeah. Hopefully the applicant will be able to answer that for you.
And then,
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, on this side, on the property line, do they have any plan to separate the parking spots with the neighboring business?
So there is a little bit of landscaping separating between the two. We did ask if they would try to find some way to connect the two sites, and what they've told us is that they were unsuccessful in doing that. And so there is just a little bit of landscaping between the two properties from their row of parking to the property line.
Okay, this way car can't go back and forth from this property to another property.
Well, with this design, there would be no interconnectivity between the adjacent properties.
Okay.
Okay, at this time, I'm gonna ask the applicant to come forward and speak on the case. Hi, y'all, and please state your name and address for the record before you start.
Brendan Hollier, that's 6342 Lakeshore Drive in Dallas, Texas.
Hi, Eric Sellis, 1313 Kittery Drive, Plano, Texas.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Commission members, thank you very much for having us here. Sincerely appreciate it. My name is Brendan Hollier. Again, I'm with Palio Partners, one of our co-founders and our managing principal of our firm. We are a real estate development company focused primarily on the development of single-tenant restaurant, retail, and entertainment uses. We've been around for about 12 years now, started at the beginning of 2008, and we've been operating for those 12 years. Continually have grown throughout, and again, focus mostly on retail and restaurant uses. Many of our clients you guys have heard of. We focus on Class A, high tenant, high profile uses such as Main Event, Chewy's, Mattress Firm. We've worked with Genghis Grill, Starbucks, Urban Air, groups of that nature. I'm going to go ahead and, if you don't mind, take control here and show you what we're planning on doing and just kind of reiterate what Mr. Briner had addressed here. So I'm here today to shed some light on the proposed development, the project at 4917 Colleyville Boulevard, and I would be happy to answer any questions along the way. As you see here, you can see the site proposed along Colleyville Boulevard on 26. The site was a former Sonic restaurant that went out of business and sat vacant for quite some time. I believe it went out in 2012, was demolished in 2013, so it's been vacant. The lot's been vacant now for going on 7 years. One here. As just explained, Enterprise Rent-A-Car is the tenant we're working with on this project. We have plans to construct a 1,600 square foot building with our most recent site plan showing 28 stalls. As Mr. Briner had mentioned, we are overparked by code. Code requires 8 stalls to date, so we've got 20 extra stalls there. We've worked diligently over the past several months, really going on 6 months now with the community development department, our architect, landscape architect, and our engineer to design a building and site that all parties involved are going to be really extremely proud of. As you can see, we've made a concerted effort to go beyond, above and beyond on the building and landscape design with the intention of an extremely high-class project for the city of Colleyville. The proposed project will be comprised mainly of stone and stucco with numerous articulations to create an enhanced aesthetic. We've included a metal awning system and abundant landscaping, all of which will contribute to the project's strong curb appeal. I'd like to share a little bit of information with you about Enterprise. And again, we have Eric Sellis with us here today. Enterprise Holdings, Enterprise Rent-A-Car's parent company, is a privately held company with over $28 billion in annual revenue. Enterprise Rent-A-Car has long been regarded as the premier car rental service throughout the United States. Enterprise currently operates out of an inline space, as mentioned earlier, at Colleyville's Down Shopping Center just across the street. Enterprise has been serving the Colleyville community out of that location going on 20 years now. I believe they opened in 1999. It's our hope that with this new project, Enterprise can not only continue to serve the Colleyville community for the foreseeable future, but better serve the community by enhancing its presence and operation with such a high-quality site. And really to recap, we've been working with the city, as I mentioned, for 6 or 7 months. We understand that this corridor is your pride and joy, and that there's a lot of there's a high desire to have a highly aesthetic and pleasing building out here. We initially set out to design a building that was pleasing to Enterprise and to the city. A building they had built before. It was a square box. And by getting feedback from the city, we've continued to really improve this building along the way. We've added more stone and brick than we initially had designed. We've created articulations on both the north and the west side of the project, which are visible to the rest of the highway corridor out there. And then we've enhanced the landscaping on our landscape plan. Some questions were asked earlier about the landscaping and what would be allowed and if the city can have an influence. We're all about the city participating in that. Our interest is serving the community and designing something that you guys are going to be proud of. So we'd welcome continued feedback on the building and the landscaping.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'd say to the committee, thank you for allowing us to participate and present this project to you. We have been here since 1999. Really, the interest for us has been, we've been in a strip location that it's very difficult to be seen from. So we are kind of one of the smaller tenants in the Whole Foods shopping center there. For a long time, we were the only tenant there, and that's certainly developed quite a bit. It's a very challenging operation for us to work out of. We do not have an on-site car cleaning facility. And certainly with it being a multi-tenant use, finding our inventory and organizing our inventory so we can walk customers out and give them choices of cars can prove to be challenging in that type of environment. We have moved to more of these freestanding types of locations. As Brandon mentioned, we've constructed a similar building to this recently in Cedar Hill, one in Saxe, and we have another one on the books in McKinney. We find that when people can see our business, even when we've been in a town for many years, our business grows because the visibility helps people know we're here. So we're excited at the opportunity to move out of something that's kind of buried in a shopping center into the freestanding location on Main Street. I did also listen to some of the pre-council meeting. This is strictly a rent-a-car location. We do have a commercial truck division where we rent just heavy-duty box trucks, and then we call them light-duty pickup trucks. This will be passenger cars, minivans, and pickup trucks. Nothing in the way of trailers or large commercial-type vehicles will be out of this facility. Basically, the same inventory we rent out of our current location.
Thank you.
Excuse me, the wash area, I mean, right now it looks like a nice, clean, big, open space, but can you kind of tell us a little more about what's going to be in there?
Generally, all these and I'm the group property development and facility manager for Enterprise and DFW. I manage about 200 of our locations. By state code in all of our locations, we need to have a sand oil separator. So the water is treated and then it is connected into the sanitary. We have a company we use nationally called Power Industries. They come out and quarterly or every 6 months, depending on the size of the operation, pump the material that comes off the car. Even the road grid off of your car is considered hazardous material, and they take that and they dispose of it properly, and we get a certificate of disposal from them. So you're only dealing with the water that comes once it has gone through the sand oil separator.
Is it going to be like a hand wash area, or is it
Yeah,
going to be like?
basically we use pressure washers. So
Pressure washer.
we use the phrase bucket wash to explain that it's not an automatic car wash that you drive through with any mechanical parts, just a pressure washer, and all biodegradable soap products that we utilize from our vendor.
And would you say the uses of the property is more intended for drive-up, walk-up business, or will you be busing people out of the airport over to this
This is
facility?
strictly for the local Colleyville area. Our DFW operations are strictly for airport passengers. Really two different types of business. I'm not sure if you're aware, Enterprise also owns Alamo and National. So we operate 3 separate brands at DFW and 3 separate brands at Love Field. Those customers are restricted to the airports, and this is what we call a home city location, where we're serving people that have been involved in accidents, their cars being repaired in a local shop, and we're billing an insurance company in many cases, or their car's in a dealership and they have an extended warranty provision that pays for a rental car where their car is being repaired. That's our core replacement business. And of course, if you're renting a car to go on a trip or for a weekend, or if you have a leased vehicle and you have a mileage restriction and you'd rather rent our car to go drive to a football game somewhere than put miles on your own, we do an awful lot of that. We also have some corporate accounts that are local that will rent vehicles from us for local business trips. And we also rent to local municipalities for schools, for basketball teams, volleyball teams, et cetera. But it's mostly really 100% neighborhood business.
Okay, thank you.
I
Anybody
have,
else?
I have one question. First of all, I'd like to say we appreciate having Enterprise Car Rental in the city of Colleyville.
Thank you.
And your length of residency here as far as your business goes. I've actually used your services, so I do appreciate it. But it hasn't been mentioned, and I don't see anywhere in here, but is any of the parking area where the vehicles will be kept, is there any awning or any kind of enclosure anywhere in there?
Right now, there's not. The only area that will be covered will be the area that we utilize for the car prep area. Very honestly, sometimes we would like to have awning this time of year in DFW and in the spring. Hail can be a real challenge to our business. But generally, we run our business at much higher utilization. This home city business that we run, the rates that we charge are much lower than the rates that we charge at the airport, but the utilization that we run is much higher.
Yes.
So we try to, if our parking lot fills up, we probably employ somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 part-time retired folks that do nothing but drive around in vans all day. You might have seen with the Enterprise magnet on the side of the van, moving vehicles from store to store. So we really try to keep our lots relatively empty. And since this is a high-volume, low-margin business, we try to keep the cars on the street, on rent. And if Colleyville has 10 cars sitting and Keller has 10 customers waiting, they're going to get moved, and vice versa, we'll do that. So we have not invested in canopies, if you will, to cover the lots. And it just gets to a point where, while we'd like to do that a lot of time, it becomes cost prohibitive.
Well, for this small area, I think what you've planned is appropriate. But I hadn't heard that mentioned, so I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming up.
Yep, appreciate it.
At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. If you would like to speak, please fill out a speaker card at the back of the room. They're located back there in the center, and you can turn that in over here. And when you approach the microphone, please state your name and address for the record. The public hearing is open. Nobody's coming forward. The public hearing is closed. Commissioners, any further discussion?
No, I mean, I would just say, this has been vacant for a long time. It's not, to me, the ideal use of this property. I mean, ideally, we'd be able to expand it out and all the way to Glade and do something bigger and better with the whole thing. But given that it's been vacant for a long time and that the other properties have businesses currently in them, I would, and they've answered the questions that I've had and others have had, I tend to support it.
Anybody else?
My only reservation is the variance on the setback, and I just wanted to mention that. So that is something that, I'm not real big on variances, but of course I know that we have to consider the whole big picture. And I do like the fact that they've planned some landscaping in that area, so I think it makes sense in this case for the variance.
Yeah, to your point, if that was like parking lot in front, I probably wouldn't.
Do I have a motion from anybody? Or would you like to come back up? Absolutely, go ahead.
I just, I'd like to address the use. We've had this site under contract since January, so we're going on 10 months now. Initially, we felt like the highest and best use was a restaurant, quick service type of group. We've talked to the coffee shops of the world and other QSR quick service uses, and have really found that this site is, number one, the size does not work for them. It's been really difficult. There are a few that you could probably squeeze on there, and they haven't shown interest. And then the second is that it's been really cost prohibitive for them. Not only having a smaller site, but the cost of new construction on a much smaller footprint for a QSR use has been really difficult. And so I just wanted to address that. We've looked at that. And of course, worked with Enterprise for a while now, and feel like they truly are the highest and best use out here. The second thing to mention on the setback earlier, it was not our intention to request a setback, but knowing the requirements and the desire of the city to have a corridor that's really presentable, we wanted to make sure that the wash was in the rear. It was less visible to that road, and so that was the reason we've situated or oriented the building the way that we did. And of course, that kind of pushed it a little bit forward. But if it wasn't for that, then yeah, we'd be a little further back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question with Director. I believe there is only 2 reserved handicap parking spots in 28 spots.
Yeah, that should be sufficient. I know that there's a ratio that they use. I think it's, this is not my expertise, but I think it's 1 handicap spaces for up to, I think maybe 10 spaces, and then it's a second one, and I think it goes all the way up to 50 spaces. And then beyond that, you have to start adding additional spaces. So my belief is that the 2 is sufficient.
Yeah, but this kind of business, rental car, people go there after the accident most of the time. That's my personal experience. And I got the handicap packet, and I went to the bank and other places. I never find a open handicap spot. You know what I mean?
I think the minimums are all that we can really enforce. Obviously, the applicant could provide more if they determined that it was needed for them.
It is part of maybe a follow-up question is, I mean, obviously, a lot of these spots are for cars people are renting. How many spots are designated for customers coming in to pick up cars?
Yeah, so I don't have that exact number, but with the size of the building, we should have at least 8 reserved for customers, being that that's the minimum required that we require for a 1,600 square foot building. That would leave 20 additional spaces for the others. But if it's like what they said, they probably may not even have that many just because they're all rented, and they may get a few in, but then they get immediately rented out.
Anything else? Does anyone want a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve zoning case 19-012.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion to approve as is. Commissioner Moore, aye. Commissioner Syed,
Aye.
Commissioner Holt,
Aye.
Commissioner Mattison is absent. Commissioner Cook,
Aye.
Commissioner Bevel,
Aye.
and Commissioner Elms is absent. It passes 5 votes to 0. Thank y'all very much. Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is consideration of an SUP for a fence on Lot 2, Block 1 of the Hodgkiss Place 2 addition, located at 2608 Highland Meadow Drive. This is case ZC19-013. Staff.
Yes, thank you. So this is a SUP special use permit to allow for a fence to extend into the required street side yard at this property at 2608 Highland Meadow Drive. This is at the corner with Pool Road, the northwest corner. There is a new house under construction, almost to be completed at this time at this location. They are requesting to have a fence pretty much up to the property line adjacent to Pool Road. The current zoning on the property is R20, single-family residential. And the future land use map does designate this property for residential use. So here's a pictometry photo of the site. So this was earlier this year. You can see the location of the house. It is, again, close to being completed. What they are requesting is to construct a solid wood fence along this property line adjacent to Pool Road. Here's an exhibit that identifies where they're wanting to put that fence. It would be an 8-foot tall fence. Again, it would be wood construction at the property line. So here's some images. The center image is to identify the type of fence that they're proposing. And then the left fence is if you're looking south from the corner of this property, you can see that there is an existing perimeter subdivision fence. It is a masonry wall there on that corner. And then the right photo is looking north along Pool Road. This would be towards the adjacent property. There is an existing 6-foot wrought iron fence there at the front property line currently. Now that one is allowed as a wrought iron fence on the property line based on the size of that property. It is over 40,000 square feet. It's several acres in size. And so it does, the Land Development Code does authorize a 6-foot, an 8-foot, up to an 8-foot wrought iron fence. But it currently is a 6-foot wrought iron fence there. Any properties less than 40,000 square feet then have to comply with additional standards within the Land Development Code. At the time that this fence was applied for permitting, these are the conditions, the regulations that were in effect at that time. And I've highlighted this regulation letter C. It identifies that if the subject lot backs to the side of another residential lot, the side yard, privacy fence, or wall shall be located not closer to the side property line than the required front setback of the adjoining lot. So being that the adjoining lot to the north does face Pool, so the side does face the front of the side property line of the adjacent lot, it has to have a front setback. In our conversation earlier, we did identify that would, under today's rule, the requirement is the front setback of the lot in question. So the 30-foot setback is what the regulation requires today. Let me go back to this exhibit. So they are asking for a solid fence along the property line. So the regulation would allow for this solid fence or any fence, but only at the setback line, which I know might be a little difficult to see up on the screen, but there's a dashed line that identifies the 30-foot setback. So if this request is not approved, that's the closest that they could be to that property line. And that'd be for any fence. The interpretation today is that all fences, it specifically says all fences has to meet that setback today. But at this time, it included, for privacy fences, it included both the solid fences and the wrought iron fences as well. Staff did send our notices out to all properties within 500 feet. And we did receive one response back, which we have provided to you. There were some concerns about visibility. If we had a solid fence up against the street, that would present a hazard to drivers as they pull up to Pool Road on Highland Meadow Drive, looking back towards the north. But staff does recommend denial of the special use permit. It does not meet the requirements of the Land Development Code at this time. And with that, I can answer any questions.
No questions? Okay, then I'm gonna ask the applicant to come forward and speak on the case. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Please,
I'm,
please state your name and address for the record.
Jacob Stone, 2608 Highland Meadows Drive.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time tonight to hear our request for a special use permit. As Mr. Briner mentioned, we're asking to put the fence on the property line. I do believe that at the time when we requested, the current code was 2/3 of the build line, which is 30 feet. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's what we were told it would be.
So the 30 feet is the correct number. I don't know that it works out exactly to the 2/3, but the 30 feet is the correct number today under today's regulations, which would give you the best number that you're looking for.
Okay, correct. And I believe that when we turned it in for the permit, I know this is a little wishy-washy, but the current code was 2/3, and we were told that it would maintain that. But obviously, I'm hoping for a variance nonetheless. The reasons being, obviously, other than the obvious of having more back and side yard for our family, but also to maintain a consistent look as both the north and the side neighbors, north and south side neighbors have fences on their property line. It would create an awkward kind of unused piece of property that we would maintain. And then lastly, it has, in our opinion, it has no effect, positive or negative, on any other members of our community other than ourselves. So happy to discuss any questions you guys have.
Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in terms of that every property up and down Pool Road has a fence on that same line, but not one is wood. So have you thought about other potential materials?
I've thought about it at
I know
this
you thought
time.
about it.
We'd like to maintain our wood look. Both there's financial implications of brick and also just the aesthetics. We prefer wood, but I'm always open to discussing.
As you mentioned, the consistent look part, which I know it's not consistent because it's either wrought iron
Correct,
or
yes, sir.
brick pretty
Correct.
much across that entire road, but,
Correct.
all right.
And I believe it was brought up, our HOA called, or the Highland Meadows HOA called me to notify me that they wouldn't be in support due to the visibility issue, but as Mr. Briner mentioned in the pre-meetings, it does meet all the visibility triangle requirements, and I've also brought a picture just of us in a car on the front line. I tried to get it out of the deck, but I don't believe I got it in time, just to show that it doesn't have an effect. There is a tree. If you're taking a left, it does not have an effect. If you were 3 cars back, it would, but obviously, you wouldn't be turning if you were 3 cars back. So there is a tree that was requested from the Highland Meadows HOA to be removed. We would be open to settling with that if that was an issue for you all, but I don't believe that it makes an impact either way.
Do you have that picture?
I do have the picture, yes, sir. I have 3 copies, so.
I think he's got it set up, we can
Oh.
put it right
Yes,
there
so
on the,
right there to your right, if you put it on the table, and then I'll zoom in.
See, that's my front tires there on the back white line, and the red line is where the fence would go on the property line. It's connected to our neighbors on our north side, and you can see it does not impact the visibility of the road.
and that big tree is one that the homeowners associations?
So, yes,
Recommend your-
one on the left, which would be inside the fence line, is the one that they,
But it's that multi-trunk big tree that we're looking at, right?
it is, yes, sir, it's a multi-trunk one, not the one on the right side of the line.
So it's outside the fence line. I mean, the fence is gonna go behind that tree, right?
The fence won't go up to that tree, but
Okay,
it would be inside the fence line, yes, sir.
That's
So, you know,
Oh, I see what you mean there.
correct.
Any other questions before I open the public hearing? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to open the public hearing now. I have one card, one speaker card, Chris and Amy Putnam. Oh, okay, sorry. Got that.
But was he?
So that was in support.
Support?
Yeah, he's in support, does not wish to speak.
Thank you.
And then we have Mary Ann Nicholson.
Thank you. I'm Mary Ann Nicholson, 2101 Highgate Drive. I am one of the directors of the Highland Meadows Homeowners Association. And the directors did discuss it. We've all driven the intersection again and are opposed to the proposed fence due to a safety issue in primarily turning left out of there. The pictures that were shown, the tree, when you stop, make a legal stop at the stop sign, the tree does block your view of turning left or pulling out right. You have to move into the crosswalk, completely into the crosswalk, to see beyond that very large tree. I don't know if removal of the tree would help the problem or not, but as it exists, this picture here, you're well into the crosswalk. I went and took photos this evening, and I'm sorry I didn't bring a thumb drive to show you, but 3 of the cars that pulled up at the same time I did, I parked and watched, had to again move all the way into the intersection, would block into the crosswalk and block any pedestrians that might be going. So it's really a safety concern. The homeowner has put in a foundation for the wall, which happens to be directly behind the tree as you look north on that street. So a wooden fence that would be put there would block visibility. At this point, I don't believe we would have any objection to a wrought iron fence because you would be able to see through that. Our objection really is to the wooden fence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to make clear that these 2 lots are not a part of the Highland Meadows HOA. I was contacted by the HOA asking if I would like to be a part of the HOA. When asked what the benefit for my family would be, we were told it's better for your neighbors to be for you than against you. So although I understand the safety concerns, I believe the picture here speaks for itself. I made sure to have my front tires on the front line here that the fence would not block it. If we were to determine for some reason it would, we'd be willing to move it back 2 feet or 3 feet to make sure it does not, but I believe that the picture here does depict it accurately.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? No more cards? I'm going to now close the public hearing. And we will open the commissioners' discussion. I'll open with, this fence would not have been allowed under the previous guidelines, correct?
That is correct. For a solid fence, on a corner side like this, it would not have been authorized at the property line.
Right.
There would have been a significant setback requirement.
And I would, I have a question for the applicant. When it comes to the location of the fence, is the location more important to you or the type of fence more important to you? Just for conversation with the commissioners here.
Yeah, for conversation, I would say the location, but in regards to the code, as I understand it, the material is not a determining factor here. But in regards to conversation, yes.
Right.
The location is more important.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
I would, I mean, I would say I am definitely open to the variance and having a fence that line. I mean, again, every house on that street has a fence along that line.
Yeah.
My concern is the wood and the fact that you can't see through it at all. And it just looks, it's just completely different from any fence on there, so. I'm open to the idea of a fence. I would like the applicant to consider potentially some other material, like a wrought iron fence, I don't think I'd question at all. Or some mix of wrought iron stone, but I'm not 100% comfortable with a 8-foot-tall wood fence there for the reasons I just mentioned.
It seems like that might be a good compromise, because the property next to yours has wrought iron, so that would provide the consistency and yet still allow you to have that usable space at your side yard and allow visibility for the people trying to turn left out of Highland Meadows.
Should have said up front.
Yes. I don't believe wrought iron is in consideration for us solely for the privacy factor. I don't know if you've driven by now, but you probably could have waved to us in the pool, and that's not in our consideration at this time. We'd be open to if it was aesthetics and potentially brick masonry, but obviously that's still a solid fence or some type of combination of wrought iron and landscaping. But we would want some privacy, as I'm sure you all can understand, as it is a busy road.
Could you do the landscaping around your pool so that you had the privacy in your backyard but still had access to that side of your yard with the wrought iron fence?
I don't believe at this time that's something we'd want to do. It would be some, I believe, intense landscaping to get some height and privacy. My main question for you all would be, and if I'm allowed to ask questions, is the negative effect if we're in agreement of the view is not obstructed based on the picture. If there's questions around that, I understand, but what the downside to a wood is, or what's your hesitation on wood other than aesthetics, or if aesthetics are it?
Mine is, so I used to live in Highland Meadows for a long time, and there was a wood fence there for a long time. And it was a problem. I mean, you had to inch out into Pool Road before you could turn left, to be able to see past it. Now, it was a different property, a different fence, but it was on that property line, and it was wood, and I just know from personal experience, it was difficult to see around that fence.
Yes, ma'am, and that was 5 feet further than this fence as we gave an easement up. So you're correct, it did make a difference, so.
Okay.
So you're saying that fence is 5 feet closer to Pool Road than what you're proposing?
The previous fence was 5 feet closer and then we gave up an easement.
So it's farther away from Pool Road and it's farther away from Highland Meadows?
Than it was previously? Yes,
Is that what
ma'am.
you're saying?
Yes. The build setback was 10 feet further, and the side setback was a 5-foot easement. Which is what allows it to not, and obviously, my family has to take a left out of there every day too, so.
Sure.
We're taking that into consideration as well, and don't want a safety hazard for us or anyone, so.
Are you willing to compromise on the setback, the distance of the setback at all, to allow for a greater setback, so it just would give a broader visual for drivers to get through that intersection?
If the location now is considered to adversely affect the drive out, then yes, I would be open to compromising on that.
Thank you. Just in the interest of, I lost my word. Just wanted to say we did have a letter of opposition from someone that had that same concern. So It was after the packets were distributed, so you probably may not have seen that. I just want you to know that.
Yes, ma'am. And again, I mean, I'm probably more affected, if not the same as everybody else. And, you know, I've got a kid and a wife, and I want to be protected too. So we're definitely taking that into consideration.
Okay.
So and it goes back to his other question, which yes, what's more important to you, the setback or the fence, type of fencing? I think you had said the setback, being able to put the fence there. I mean, would you, you know, because would you be comfortable with the idea of coming back with a more defined answer on that, and then what potentially another type of fencing material option?
Would your intent be that it would not be solid? Because I believe our options would be brick or wood if we were to consider this. That changes how I answer your question.
I think what he was saying is type of material and/or location of the fence. Because at the way it is right now in front of us, we would be voting on a motion on an 8-foot fence on the building line.
Right, so would an 8-foot brick fence change your vote? Or does it have to be see-through or opaque?
Well, I will say that a 8-foot fence all the way to the front of your house that is completely, has no visibility through it, I mean, I have questions about that today, right now. Given, again, you know, I did drive by the property. I didn't pull into Highland Meadow, so, but the fact that there is one letter and then someone representing the homeowners association is concerned about that, can't ignore that. So that's why, you know, right now today, a 8-foot tall fence that you can't see through at all, I have some questions about,
Right, and I think,
based on, you know, the concerns that have been brought up.
yeah, and I'd just like to clarify if there's still questions around visibility, or if, based on the picture and that meets the visibility triangle codes, if we're past that point.
I'm not sure we are.
One simple thing is that if you build a fence, you can park the car right here in that 30 feet area on the intersection. That's correct?
You
Director
wouldn't.
Moore?
Well, there is a minimum distance from the
30 feet.
intersection that you have to park. I'm not sure what that is, but
I don't believe anyone would want to park there due to the speed of people coming in on
And-
the right side.
If you put a straight fall, how can you see? If the people are coming from this street called Highland Meadows Drive, if you're turning left, you can't see the traffic.
I'm unsure of your example.
She's just citing concerns for being able to see the traffic.
Okay,
With
and
the
moving
fence as
traffic or
well.
parked cars?
Moving traffic.
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
ma'am, yeah. I think based on the picture, I don't have any concerns about the visibility of taking left unless you're rolling through the stop sign. I think that there's previous concern from homeowners in the past, like Mrs. Holt, who lived there previously, and remember, it's a challenging intersection already to take a left out of, so I think they remember having to lean to see, but that fence was 5 foot further than it will be now. I think that to kind of summarize this and in everyone's time, I think we'd be open to giving 2 to 3 feet, 4 feet, rather than 20, and if visibility is the main concern. Does that answer the majority of the questions?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So the compromise I just want to clarify what that was, would be to locate the fence where in relationship to the proposed fence
2 to 3 to 4 feet.
inside.
So
Yeah,
you can,
back
we
from
can
it, so-
approve it the way it is on the property line. We can deny it and it'll be on the dotted line, or we can say 2 feet or 3 feet back.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
more like 10 feet.
Yeah.
Those are the options.
Go ahead.
Again, in the effort of time, I'd like to propose just moving it back 5 additional feet. We can vote on that,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
So the applicant has said he'd be willing to move it back 5 feet on a vote
From the property line or?
from the building.
From Pool Road.
Yeah, from the property line, yeah. From what you see here, move it in 5 feet,
So this red line is right on the property line?
yes.
And he said 5 feet in?
Into, yes.
Well, I'm not
For
comfortable.
me
less than
personally,
15
I
feet.
understand that this is a busy road, and there's a lot of different factors that go into these SUPs. We're gonna be looking at a lot of different side yards over the coming years, I can assume. And there's a lot of different factors, but there is constant traffic there. And my personal opinion would be moving it back in 5 feet. Definitely removes any kind of question of being able to see it. And, does give them that privacy there and is similar, in my opinion, to a lot of the different fences. It's difficult because it's a Grapevine Colleyville border right there. So there's, a lot of different fences in that area. But, that's just where I'm at, so.
So right now it's 30 feet setback. And 30 feet setback is right at 10 feet from the building line, correct?
Well, I don't know the exact distance from the house where it is, but you can see the dash line on this exhibit. Pretty much where the two red legs stop is the 30-foot required setback.
And the compromise is to move it 5 feet toward the required setback.
Correct, yeah, so that north-south red line
Instead of being
adjacent to pool would move over 5 feet,
So instead of being 30 feet, it would be 25 feet,
correct.
okay?
So can I make a motion?
Yes,
Are y'all ready?
yes.
I make a motion that we approve case ZC19-013 with the caveat that the fence goes back 5 feet towards the house from the property line.
So 5 feet off the property line.
Mhm.
5 additional feet, right?
No,
It-
they said just 5 feet.
Yeah, it's proposed on the property line, so
Okay,
this would
got
be a
it.
5-foot.
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
same thing, sorry.
Do I have a second for that?
Awkward pause here. I'll second that.
Commissioner Moore, aye. Said,
Nay.
Holt,
Aye.
Mattison, absent. Koch,
Aye.
Bevel,
Aye.
Helms, absent. The motion passes 4-1. Next item on the agenda. Consideration of a rezoning from CC1 to PUD-C for a new restaurant on Lot 1, Block 1 of the Applebee's Edition, located at 5150 Colleyville Boulevard, case ZC19-014.
All right, thank you. So this is a rezoning request from the CC1 Village Retail District to the Plan Unit Development Commercial District for a new restaurant at this site at 5150 Colleyville Boulevard. This is the old location of the Londoner Restaurant. Is proposed to be replaced with a new Chick-fil-A restaurant. You can see the existing Londoner building site here on this photo. As I stated, the current zoning is CC1, Village Retail. This zoning district does not allow for a restaurant with drive-through type services. That's the purpose for the change of zoning request. It is part of the Colleyville Boulevard corridor, and as I stated this is where the commercial activities are expected to occur, all commercial office retail type uses along Colleyville Boulevard. So here's another photo of the site, and so this, what you see here will be demolished and then replaced with a new Chick-fil-A building. And so here's the proposed site plan exhibit for that. And so it will have a drive-through component to it, just like all other Chick-fil-A's. They do have a double drive-through that will be on the Colleyville Boulevard side. It'll wrap around to the Pleasant Run side. They do comply with almost all of our development regulations. I'll go through the actual modifications as proposed with the ordinance here in just a little bit. They did provide some elevations for us, and so here's the building as proposed, the different sides. So that darker brown is actually a brick. It's not really showing up very well on this. And then here's some 3D models of this building. They have provided a landscape plan for this. We do have drainage and utility plan for this as well. All right, so as far as the ordinance itself, so it will, again, be proposed to allow for a restaurant with drive-through. It is approximately 5,064 square feet. They will maintain the CC1 Village Retail District, but then add the restaurant with drive-through use as a permitted use for this property as well. The elevations will also be attached as part of this ordinance, and so what you see today, they will have to substantially conform to those elevations as they construct the building, if approved. As far as landscaping, the land development code does require a 20-foot landscape strip along the property line adjacent to Colleyville Boulevard. There's one section where there's 6 spaces close to the intersection with Pleasant Run where they weren't able to make it meet with the 20-foot requirement. They're proposing that to be reduced to 10.5 feet just along that stretch of the 6 parking spaces. Otherwise, everything will have to conform to that landscape plan that you saw before. Also, land development code does require a solid 30-inch wall when adjacent to parking or drive-through area, where across the street we have residential uses. In lieu of that solid masonry wall, they do want to propose a live screening, so a hedgerow at the same height. It'll provide, the intent for that wall is to help block some of the the headlights as they go through the drive-through and any parking there on that side to mitigate that potential light that could shine onto the residential properties on the other side of the street. But again, they'd rather do a live screen hedgerow versus the masonry wall. And then for parking, based on the size of this building, 51 spaces are required. They were able to get 49 spaces, so they're proposing 49 total spaces for this site. We also sent our notices to all properties within 500 feet for this request as well. We did not receive any requests back formally in one way or the other for this property. Staff does recommend approval. It does conform to the designation in the future land use plan, destination Colleyville, and also conforms to recent development trends on surrounding properties and along Colleyville Boulevard. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Any questions?
Not for staff, yep.
I have a question. The proposed hedges. This isn't, obviously, the PUD, if they die and there's still hedges sitting there, does it, I mean, I'm all about more greenery in this, I'm all about more green and less concrete, trust me.
Yeah. We actually do have a regulation that all required landscaping has to be maintained in perpetuity.
Okay.
So if it does die, then we have our code enforcement officer go out and make sure it gets replaced in a timely fashion. Otherwise, we'll begin our enforcement process.
So I had the same question, but I was going to propose a similar question. I was going to propose it to the applicant. Because we've all been in a Chick-fil-A drive-through, right? And they're long. There's a lot of cars for a reason. It's a good product. So if you're behind the building and you're facing those houses, that's a pretty steady stream of potential headlights facing that way.
Right.
So again, we'll talk to them about it, but I would like to see potentially a better, maybe a wall for a portion of that where the headlights are, they're gonna be pretty constant at night going that way. So we'll ask them, but are they open to, maybe a more permanent or type of barrier there, maybe to where the front of the restaurant is, and then move to shrubs if we can make that look nice. But
Yeah, so the requirement is for the masonry.
Yeah.
They're proposing the vegetation, so yeah, they are here, so hopefully they'll be able to answer that question for you.
And then the other question is that dumpster, where it's at. I know they'll probably talk about that. We talked about that at length at the pre-meeting, so.
So, to my knowledge, the applicant is not in the room, but the
No, they
owner
are here.
is? Okay, everybody's here now?
Yeah, they're here.
Okay.
You probably may.
Oh, I'm
be able to-
sorry. Got it. That's the next one.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So I'm gonna ask the applicant to come forward and please speak on the matter.
Good evening. My name is Brian Berger. I'm with Berger Engineering, 17103 Preston Road, Dallas, Texas. Like Mr. Briner stated, the reason we're before you tonight is to request the approval of a PUD for a 5,000 square foot dine-in drive-through Chick-fil-A restaurant to replace the vacant Londoner restaurant located at Pleasant Run Road and Colleyville Boulevard. We'll be providing 49 parking spaces, 27 stacking spaces for the drive-through, as well as enhanced landscape for parking lot screening. I'd be really more than happy to answer any questions y'all might have. I do have Jetra Sanders with Chick-fil-A here with us tonight as well as Bryce Nichols with Mays and Associates Architecture. In relation to the shrubbery, right now we're proposing a single row of shrubs, 30 inches tall for screening. We do have some room there in the drive-through area where if we wanted to do multiple rows of shrubs, we could do that to kind of help break that up even more. Keep in mind, like we talked about in the pre-meeting before, our parking lot does sit down 2.5 to 3 feet lower than Pleasant Run Road today, so that'll almost be like a natural headlight screen as well, because we'll be down in such a hole. Where you do have those parking spaces along Pleasant Run Road, where we had some concern before, we're anywhere from 3 to 4 feet lower than the finished floor elevation of that residential building across the street from us. So with that, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
I think we aired some concerns last time about the location of the dumpster, which you
Yes.
spoke to. I would just ask you for any update. I'm sure you looked at that.
We did. So we went back, I kind of looked at some of the old layouts we had done and that we'd also worked with staff on. The issue we ran into, like we talked about before, was with this particular layout, we've got an isolated drive-through where our dine-in customers really don't have to interact with the drive-through traffic because that drive-through is isolated. If we were to try to move that dumpster back towards that detention pond, then all of a sudden, all of our customers are having to cross that drive-through traffic. At the same time, when we do that, we are going to lose a significant amount of parking just because that site is so narrow. So really, you know, I think the location we've got, I know it's not ideal because it's in the middle of the site, but it's not along a major thoroughfare. At least we're back off that a little bit. We do have some screening and landscape islands around that dumpster where we will have some evergreen shrubs. So we will screen that as best we can. And it's easily accessible coming in there off Pleasant Run Road.
Okay.
Is there on the dumpster, is there like a brick wall around it with gates?
Yes, ma'am. 3 sides will be a masonry wall, and then there'll be double metal doors coming in off Pleasant Run Road. That'll be closed. And I did hear about the trash being sat out in front of the dumpster
Right.
in the pre-meeting. That's Chick-fil-A. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
They're not going to want their customers coming in and seeing that. So if that were to be left there overnight, it would be cleaned up the next morning.
Any other questions?
Oh, well, you mentioned the shrub wall as opposed to masonry wall and it being lower than Pleasant Run. What is that? Was this like a little hill that's a slope up? But
Yeah, so right now, you know, you got the curb line of Pleasant Run Road. We're gonna come off of that 6 feet with the sidewalk, and then it's gonna slope straight down, but we'll have about 2.5 feet of vertical fall down to our curb line. So what we could do is at the bottom of that, we can do our row of shrubs, which will catch that headlight screen right as they're coming around the corner, and then we could do a second row of shrubs behind it to kind of help break that up even more. That would be at you know, another foot or two up from the elevation down below. So we could kind of do a double row there to kind of break that up a little bit. And it'll be very similar to what you've got just north of there on your, the city's parking lot there at Main Street. It'd be very similar. But in this case, we'd have two rows of shrubs there at the turn for the drive-through.
And do you have any other locations, Chick-fil-A locations, where the trash area is in a similar type location?
None that come to mind. This is a very unique site,
Yeah.
and I know it's important to y'all because of its proximity to the downtown area. So we've done everything we can. It's not ideal for us either. We really don't want it there. But at the same time, in order to try to separate the drive-through traffic from the dine-in traffic, I just don't know of a better solution. But it does keep it away from the streets. It's not backing up to a street.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, appreciate that.
I guess I'm sorry, if you can come back. Can you speak a little bit more towards, you know, I want to pay attention a little bit more what you're saying about the dumpster and what would be around it and what you're proposing around it again?
Sure. So right now, on the north side of that dumpster, which would be facing the main entry to our building, there'll be a landscape island between the dumpster and that parking area. So we'll be able to do some evergreen shrubs in there, which we could make those that you could almost match the height of the dumpster enclosure once they mature. And then also on that east side, we do have the little storage room there, which will be made out of the same material as the dumpster, which will match the building. We've got a small landscape island on that east side where we can do some evergreen shrubs as well. And then on the south side, which is there between the two entry points coming in off Pleasant Run and Colleyville Boulevard, there's a small landscape island there that we've got some room to do some evergreen shrubs as well to kind of break up. So you're just not looking at a masonry wall. You'll have some evergreen shrubs in front of that. And of course, we can play with the plant materials. We can do different things in there if we need to.
So again, I was just thinking out loud, but on the current picture, I'm not suggesting this is better. I'm just trying to understand the thought process. If you look just a little bit left, it looks like there's 3 trees and then there's 2 parking spots by themselves.
Yes.
Why did you choose the location you did for the dumpster versus maybe that even?
Sure. Primarily due to size. I could not fit that dumpster in that island with just the 2 parking spaces, just due to the size. And then, secondly, that actually puts it closer to the intersection. which, we're trying to get it as far away as possible from that intersection. So really where we've got it was more central. So that's kind of my reasoning there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to open the public hearing to now. Yeah. You can take the card over here. Thank you. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Donald Fresher and Cheryl Fresher, 35 Piazza, right across the street.
Okay.
So as one of the people that's going to be most affected by this, we're like the ones right across the street, right on the corner there. And we're worried about three things: noise, lights, and traffic. So our bedrooms face right on Pleasant Run Road. That's our bedrooms right there, second story and first, right there. So any lights coming across there
And kitchen.
are going to go right into our house, especially the bedrooms. So obviously, we have some concern about the noise and the lights that are going to go in there. It's our preference that that be minimized, however that gets done, so that we can have privacy. I mean, one of the reasons we moved to the village was to be in a village-like atmosphere. We didn't want to be in the heavy traffic and all that. And now this is going to bring a lot of that traffic. You can tell by their design right there that they have 2 lanes going in there, which means that there's going to be a lot of traffic going through there. And the easements, and that's okay, but that's not going to affect across the street and the second story. That's not going to help. So our hope is that we can get something more, give us more privacy, less noise, less lights. The traffic's going to be coming in from Pleasant Run. Anything going north on Highway 26, you have to turn on Pleasant Run to get in there, because when you go south, you can be able to make a right-hand turn there, but anything that comes north or down Pleasant Run is all going to go through our street right across from our house.
We're not going to be able to get in and out of our house.
Well, we don't know. I mean,
There's going to be constant, because of Chick-fil-A is so popular, it's going to be constant traffic.
we like Chick-fil-A meat there, but I don't know how much that's going to affect our property right across the street.
Well, it's going to affect the village getting in and out. It's not just us, because of that location.
We're just, we feel like we're going to be one of the most affected by this whole thing. And so we want to know what we need to do, or just say, just to bring it to your attention.
Really, it's very upsetting to us. I mean, when we moved here, I was so excited, and well, yeah, the Londoner was there, we'd go and have something to eat, and then we can walk to Ruggieri's and everything, and it was so beautiful. But now, for us, it's gonna be, it makes me sick. The idea of that gonna be across from my home. It's different if we're a restaurant, but this is a fast food restaurant. That's different. I've never been around any of the cities around
It's
here.
the drive-through that makes it
Where they have
different.
the drive-through restaurant right next to a home. It's usually in, like, the McDonald's is over here at Market Street, and it's usually in some sort of a shopping center area. It's not just smacked where the houses are.
So that's our concern.
I'm not happy about it. And so I don't think that the solution is to be putting up shrubs. That's a cheap solution. I think there needs to be a barrier, and if they want to make it look nicer, put some shrubs up, if that's what we have to do to make it look nicer. But shrubs die. They come down, and yeah, there's people that go around and check on stuff, but there's been a car. I don't think the zoning people look, or that's another issue. I'm just saying is that it needs to be a permanent one, and if they want to make it look nice, I would prefer to add in some shrubbery, but I think shrubbery's not enough.
I just think when you have the drive-through and all the lights are facing right at you in that drive-through, that just won't be enough to help us, especially on the second floor.
Well, my daughter's bedroom's up there, our guest room's up there. That's going to go right into the house.
So that's
why I'm really against this.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. We appreciate it.
My name is Anthony McNoskey. My wife Dee and I have lived at 5108 Pleasant Run Road since 1979. We have had restaurants in front of us before without any problem. And we love Chick-fil-A. We frequent it often. But again, we are concerned with the traffic problem. With the new highway going in, or the new road going in, Colleyville Boulevard. My wife mentioned that people coming north on Colleyville Boulevard, there's no left-hand turn into Chick-fil-A. I'm not sure if there's going to be a left-hand turn at Pleasant Run Road or not, and if there is, Pleasant Run Road is going to be used frequently to enter into Chick-fil-A from the east entrance. We don't know whether those entrances are going to be one in and one out, or they're both going to be in and out. If they are both in and out, in the evening hours and at night, coming out the east entrance, the lights are going to be shining right into my yard, right up into my driveway. And we're concerned about that also. Also concerned about the lighting that is going to light the whole area. How bright is that going to be? We've had problems with that in the past. And when the Londoner was there, and before that there was Applebee's, we had to complain and fight to lower the lighting of that area because it just brightened up everything. It was daylight all the time. So we're mainly concerned about the traffic, and I understand that this is going to take the place of Chick-fil-A on up the road in Hearst. It's going to be moving down to this location. At least I found that out tonight. I'd like to know if that Chick-fil-A is going to stay open, and if so, it's only 1.5 miles up the road. I understand this is probably a better location for higher volume and everything else, but it's not going to be a good fit for us. We think a better location would be at the market center up here. There's an empty building up there. There's an empty bank building up there. That would be an excellent location for that, for this Chick-fil-A. And if it moves in there, I'm going to be using it, that's for sure. We don't know what the hours of operation are, but I'm sure it's well into the evening hours. My wife wanted me to ask the question, who do we contact and voice our concerns to when the traffic becomes problematic? Chick-fil-A is so popular, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we're concerned about being able to get out of our driveway and into the road with all that traffic coming up. So the problem is people coming north again are going to have to either go up, they're going to have to go up to Main Street and either make a U-turn on Main Street and come back down and enter into Chick-fil-A from the west side, or they'll make a left-hand turn onto Main Street and another left-hand turn onto Pleasant Run to come in from the east side. Those are our concerns, and at the present time, we stand against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
My name's Evan Garcia. I live at 616 U Daly, Colleyville, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen of the commission and the public, it is an honor and a privilege to speak here tonight. I respectfully disagree with the staff's recommendation that the proposed use conforms to the future land use plan and stated goals described in the destination Colleyville plan. Chapter 9 of the comprehensive plan, character and placemaking, page 144, action 910, states the community's desire to establish specific design principles and guidelines for the central sector of the corridor, of the 26 corridor, to transform it into a true walkable mixed commercial center for the city. The next paragraph states that the goal is to make each of these nodes, Main Street in this case, internally walkable to create more of a park once environment while creating a unique sense of place along the Colleyville Boulevard corridor. If this governing body gives the city council their approval, this board will not be adhering to the comprehensive plan of making a more walkable environment. Look at any Chick-fil-A in the North Tarrant region, they are all car-dependent businesses. This development, like other Chick-fil-A's, will be a majority car-dependent business, and it will not be contributing to the Park Once environment as stated in the plan. It will be a complete and total contradiction to the values of the Colleyville Main Street Village District as stated by some of the property owners behind me. The second reason the city staff recommends approval is the proposed use conforms to the recent development trends on the surrounding properties and along Colleyville Boulevard. It is my learned opinion as a GIS analyst and a demographer currently pursuing a graduate degree in city and regional planning that this zoning change and development plan is not at all consistent with the recent developments in the Colleyville Main Street Village District. The development at 5232 Colleyville Boulevard, the lofts located at the junction of Mission Lane and Colleyville Boulevard, is a perfect example of a recent development in the Main Street Village District that adheres to the walkable mixed-use appeal of the district. The loft development appropriately adheres to page 146 of the plan, which states the desire to encourage multi-story buildings immediately adjacent to the Highway 26 corridor, in addition to the intersection tower elements to add appropriate scale, interest, and character along the corridor. By approving this single-story, singular land use zoning change request, the Planning and Zoning Commission would abandon the values that makes the Main Street Village District what it is today. During the work session meeting on September 23rd, the government body spoke at length about the location of the dumpster on site, and the applicant stated there's nowhere else to put it. It has to go in the front somewhere. If placed in the front and facing Pleasant Run, it will be an eyesore and it will negate the fact that Pleasant Run is a Pleasant Run. On 3 separate occasions of the work session meeting that took place on September 23rd, 2 members of the city planning staff stated that it is a tight site. Not 5 minutes later did the applicant himself state that it is a tight site. The applicant went on to state, "I've been doing Chick-fil-A's for over 20 years and it's gotten worse and worse every year," alluding to the insurmountable increase in volume of vehicular traffic that Chick-fil-A's attract. Ladies and gentlemen, do you really think this location will be any different? If developed, this property will have a significant negative impact on the vehicular flow of Highway 26, Pleasant Run, and Main Street. Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I ask you, is that the kind of traffic we want going through our walkable, mixed-use Main Street Village District? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more cards? No more speakers. The public hearing is now closed. I'd invite the applicant to come up and address any of the concerns brought forth in the public hearing.
Sure, I guess I'll run through just a couple things. If I, make sure I understood, go back to that.
You want that
aerial
one?
picture, yeah. So if we're talking about the 2 residential areas, I know the home there on the south side, the second story, y'all live immediately west of the building now, correct? Okay. So given our current layout with the isolated drive-through, you know, our drive-through traffic, when they are headed westbound, is completely on the north side of our site. So they are gonna have to make the turn there, but at least the majority of the time that the headlights are facing due west, they are further north on the property. So they're basically pushed up against that detention pond. So they're almost looking straight down the existing roadway versus head-on into the existing single family that's there. In relation to traffic, it's Chick-fil-A. It is gonna be busy. This is a tight site. You know, we are taking an existing restaurant that's been vacated for some time. We could do a traffic study. All that's gonna tell you is that it's busy. In this particular case, we've got only one access point that we're allowed off of Colleyville Boulevard and one off Pleasant Run Road. And we're matching the existing drive locations that are currently there today. So we're not making any changes to those drive approach locations. So if there's headlights coming out of that restaurant today, there'll be headlights coming out of it when we're done. So there will be no change to that. With regards to the site lighting, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we're required 0-foot candles at the property line.
I believe it allows 0.5, but
0.5.
essentially 0.
Essentially 0. So we would not be allowed to spill any lighting outside of our property line. So any site lights that we would have internally, once they reach that property line, would basically have to be 0 anyway. So we'll definitely make sure that's directed away from that area there to the west. And with regards to the dumpster, I don't know where else to put it. We could try to rearrange the site somehow, but we would go back to, in my opinion, creating a bigger traffic situation, because now all the dine-in customers and the drive-through customers would have to intermingle.
But that, I mean, in all fairness, that's how most Chick-fil-A's are set up today.
Not anymore. Now, the old ones that we did 15 years ago, yes, they're all that way. And now we're coming back and tearing a lot of those down and going to this exact situation. So every new restaurant, I'd say 95% of them that we're doing are an isolated drive-through to kind of keep that from occurring. Because we've learned, you know, the best way to put that is, you know, we used to always have parking. If you'll recall, when you go to Chick-fil-A, there's always head-in parking up against the building, but you can't get in it because the drive-through backs up. So they're almost wasted spaces. So now we're coming back on a lot of the stores I did 20 years ago. We're tearing that parking out and adding a double drive-through because they're just useless spaces. So there's just things we've learned, such as going to this isolated drive-through, going to the double drive-through, going to the canopies for ordering, things of that nature to kind of increase the speed of service. Also going to the face-to-face ordering where you've got a team member out there taking, you know, your order on an iPad to try to speed things up. And all that actually helps add to the traffic situation where we're getting our customers on and off the site quicker, so that drive-through traffic is not backing out onto the highway.
I would assume that y'all have your numbers down to a pretty tight count, but as far as the amount of traffic, how long is it gonna take for it to spill out onto 26 or to Pleasant Run?
You would have to have about 30 cars waiting in that drive-through, solid, all the way from the window back to Colleyville Boulevard. It'd be 30 cars.
Can you go back to the layout picture of the proposed layout?
So that would be 30 cars before you hit where it goes back to a single lane right there? You can fit 30 from the window back?
Basically, from the window to the entry point is 27, so you'll probably get another 2 or 3 going all the way back to Colleyville Boulevard. And what's been happening, and I'm sure if you've been to a Chick-fil-A in the Dallas area, there are usually, if traffic is backing up, there are team members out there directing traffic. What I foresee happening here, if it is that bad, where traffic is backing up, which with 30 stacks, we shouldn't have an issue, I would assume anybody coming in off Colleyville Boulevard would be directed around, circle around the 2 parking spaces that were mentioned earlier, and come into the drive-through from the south side. So there would be team members out there controlling traffic to keep people off of Colleyville Boulevard, or stacking onto Colleyville Boulevard.
So there will be a plan for that?
Yes, sir. And that's usually left up to the operator of the store. You know, the operator is usually a local resident that will run that location. And so they'll be able to control that traffic flow.
So I will say this, I want to find a way to make this work, but I am very sensitive to the concerns that we heard from the citizens tonight. I think they're real. Would there be any option to revisit even where the entrance into Pleasant Run Road is. For example, there is that turn-in to, and again, this may not be acceptable or may not work, but that road that goes to the Chase Bank. If you put the Pleasant Run Road entrance more in line with that, or, I don't know if there's anything we can do on Colleyville Boulevard, but I do have some concerns about Pleasant Run Road and where that entrance comes in. It's right there where the residents are. Is there an opportunity to revisit that, place it somewhere a little differently?
I'm not familiar with Chase Bank. Is that further
Okay,
north or
so right
further
here,
south?
where you see, if you look where that white car is, behind it, that, right there?
Yes.
That goes into Chase Bank.
Okay. That's probably an option. Your circulation's not gonna be as good, so I think we might actually be doing more harm than good. But from a circulation standpoint, I don't disagree that it would be better for the residences that way. Another option might be maybe to align it with, can we do that? I'm not sure where the house is on the southern
So this is,
property.
this is the residential property here. This would be an alley that
Mhm.
accesses the garages for these units. But this would be the McNoskis.
Where's the home?
It's just back there. That's
Back
the
right
driveway
back
that goes
there.
to the house right here.
That's something we can look at.
Also, I may have missed it, but do you have, are the hours of operation included in your plan? Did I overlook that?
It's 6:30 to 10, Monday through Friday, which is our standard operating hours for Chick-fil-A, and then 6:30 to 11, Friday and Saturday. And then, of course, closed Sunday.
Walkability wise, is that a sidewalk I see?
Yes, sir. So,
And you can access the front door? There's a lane there to cross and everything?
yes, sir, that's correct. We're proposing a 6-foot sidewalk along Pleasant Run Road, which is not there today, which will connect to the existing sidewalk you have in front of your parking there to our north. And then we'll have a sidewalk connection for pedestrian access off of Pleasant Run Road there to the front of the store.
So is the idea for the shrubs along Pleasant Run Road just a cost-saving measure? Is there a way to get a wall in there to help with that?
The reason for the shrubs is simply because of the grade difference. So if I come in there and I do a 30-inch tall masonry wall, it's not gonna do any good because I'm already 2.5 foot in a hole.
Okay.
So by the time I put the shrubs in there, I'm another 2.5 foot up. So, yeah, I mean, there's money involved there, but it's not gonna screen any more than the shrubs are gonna screen. That's why I offered up that we'll do the.
Double
the-
wall of
yes.
So
shrubs?
the pavement will be 5 feet roughly below the top of the shrubs?
So the concrete paving there along Pleasant Run Road where we've got the 5 or 6 parking spaces, on the far south side, that is 3 foot lower than the finished floor of the residential building across the street. And then as you move north, it's as much as 4 foot, as you move towards the drive-through. And then at the rear of the drive-through where the cars would be making the turn, that's about 2.5 to 3 feet lower than the actual street curb of Pleasant Run Road.
And is that a gradual increase in grade?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll come in, it'll be we'll just grade straight up at a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 slope. It'll slope across that landscaping that's there.
So this may be a question for the city, but when you come to noise abatement type of efforts, does more of a concrete or stone barrier have a greater effect of reducing noise than shrubs?
I'm sure it does because it is completely solid versus there's maybe a little bit of permeability with landscaping. So yeah, I think there is that, but I don't know what the difference between the two might be.
Yeah, but at 2.5 foot, if it was 8 foot tall, sure, but at 2.5 foot tall,
That's why I asked the question.
yeah,
I don't-
it's basically waist high.
But it would be higher based on what you were saying with, it would actually be higher because it's on top of a hill.
If we built it, well,
If you built it.
yeah, it would essentially would be a foot taller than the parking. When I'm saying the 3.5 foot, 4 foot difference, that's from the finished floor of the building across the street to our parking. When you're talking about the masonry wall, the masonry wall would actually only be 1 foot taller.
So you wouldn't put the masonry wall up level with the street? You would put it down,
It would be sitting down slightly, yes.
down adjacent to the parking lot?
That is correct.
And, okay.
Because we've only got 5 feet in there anyway.
So you can't put a masonry wall up?
Essentially, what you'd have is you'd have 2 feet of overhang for your parking space. So there's 2 foot of landscaping, and then you'd have a masonry wall, which is probably gonna be another 12 to 18 inches thick. So that would almost take up all your space.
Where the parking lot is.
That is correct.
And then the other, so the way, I know I'm picturing Colleyville Boulevard and the changes that are taking place there, and the only way to get into this location, westbound or northbound, whatever that is in Colleyville Boulevard, would be to turn at Pleasant Run. Is that correct? There's no way into the actual location if you're going west or northbound, whatever that is.
I believe that's right. I believe that's where the median opening is at Pleasant Run.
That's correct. Yeah, northbound traffic would have to come in off Pleasant Run. Southbound traffic could come in off the drive approach onto Colleyville Boulevard.
So again, my two sticking point, I got 3 sticking points, but one I'm kind of probably willing to give into potentially at the end is where the Pleasant Run Road entrance, and then the barrier between Pleasant Run Road and the location. The dumpster is also concerning, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think more discussion needs to be had on that, but maybe, that's of the 3, that's not, but I do hear the concerns of that the people voiced tonight, and I would like to see some discussion of changes before, like, I would not be comfortable right now approving as is what you presented.
Sure. I mean, I do, I don't see any reason why you couldn't slide the driveway onto Pleasant Run further south. I mean, I am getting a little concerned about, you've got an entry off Colleyville, an entry off Pleasant Run, and then the intersection there at Colleyville and Pleasant Run, all awfully close to each other.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
It's just something that some kind of a traffic study on Pleasant Run, what is that? Colleyville Boulevard is what it is, but Pleasant Run is not designed for, I don't think, for a large traffic volume. And so is there some type of study that's been done or looked at that at all?
So Pleasant Run, I believe, is at least a collector level road
Okay.
within town. Obviously, as you go through the village, it transitions to a little bit more pedestrian with automobiles, but it still is considered a collector road all the way down to Colleyville Boulevard.
So we know, though, that with the Chick-fil-A here, there will be an increase in traffic. There will be, no doubt. I know there was a restaurant there before, and I know they served alcohol, and I know they probably had later hours. I'm not sure. I didn't really go there. But I guess the noise that our neighbors are referring to would be the traffic noise. The lights, I think you all have that covered.
Yes, ma'am.
And if we want to have successful businesses, which we certainly do, we all love Chick-fil-A, but sometimes I won't go there because I don't want to get in that double line where I can't get out. So, but we want good businesses in Colleyville, and we want to make good use of the land that is currently vacant as well. And so, I'm with, Matt here. I think that we might, I mean, if there's any way to make it more, conducive to neighbor friendliness, I think we should look at that. If we've done everything already we can, then we probably should act on it, but that's just my thoughts.
Hey, I'm Jetra Sanders. I'm with Chick-fil-A Corporate in Atlanta. Just want to come up here and work with y'all on how we can get this approved. What is it that you're wanting or needing? I hear the neighbors, I hear their concerns. I know our engineer Brian has addressed lighting. We can talk about noise, we can talk about walls, we can talk about landscaping, we can talk about all those things to make everybody happy. But I just need some input of what it is that you're wanting or that we can reach an agreement.
So, I think I mentioned the three
Yes.
things that
Sure.
I'd like to potentially, and again, without actually seeing an actual proposal of exactly what you're talking about, it's hard to vote on it.
Sure.
But I do think that what I'm not comfortable with, the proposed shrub barrier between the homeowners on Pleasant Run and the restaurant, even with, whatever
The grade
the grade
change.
changes. I'm not comfortable necessarily with just a shrub barrier. I'm also not comfortable where the current entrance is on Pleasant Run. I would like to see if there's another option. I get that that potentially creates other potential problems, but I'd like to see that. I wish there would be some kind, what kind of additional traffic this does put on Pleasant Run. Colleyville Boulevard, again, not concerned about it.
I guess I'm concerned with the spacing between Colleyville and Pleasant Run. The entrance, there's typically a requirement of the distance.
Yeah, but there's a road there now on the other side of the street, so.
Right.
I know, again, Chick-fil-A is very busy, I get that, but if there is a road going into a business on the other side of the street, you can poke holes in that, I guess, as well, but right now,
Is there
people pulling into Pleasant Rain, their headlights are going right into that man's property.
Okay,
But what was his experience?
I don't think we're gonna be able to address, agree, we're not gonna be able to agree on a location of an entrance or exit, tonight, but I think we could address the question of the barrier, and if y'all be comfortable putting a concrete barrier has shrubbery in front of it possibly.
sure.
Would that something that we could help us move this along? That was one of the concerns I know. And I like, I think everybody in this community likes the trees and the shrubbery and everything.
Sure.
I also hear the residents' concerns about the noise and lighting, and a concrete wall that's aesthetically pleasing with the shrubbery in front of it between that and the road.
Okay,
Is that something we can
agree.
on?
That helps me.
Yeah. And then,
So I think lighting's not an issue as far as the lighting poles, because we have to meet the code,
Right.
so that's not an issue.
code is code.
Yeah, your concern is more of the headlights, so I think if we put up some type of barrier wall with landscaping, that'll help. As far as noise, we do the face-to-face ordering.
Yeah.
Majority of the time, so our employees are walking beside the car taking the order, so that decreases a lot of the noise as far as speaking into a menu box and having those issues. So, yes, we can agree to some type of wall. We can leave the entrance where it is, but try to work with you as far as code or what the requirements are to see how that can work out. Do y'all
That would
know?
be city engineering, correct, Ben?
Right, we will have to review our driveway spacing minimum standards to see
This-
what minimally we can do to see if it can line up.
This will, to my understanding, make its way to city council, where additional concerns could be addressed at
Right.
that time.
So tonight you'll be making a recommendation to city council. And so city council, with your direction, if it is to evaluate that drive location and present something to city council, you can do that as part of your motion, and we would work with the applicant to present something appropriate to the city council.
So that would be a condition for us to show you some type of screening wall and also look at the driveway location as a recommendation. Does that meet your concerns?
Helps, I mean, I'd like to kind of, if it's appropriate, to see a gentleman, one of the residents raising his hand, to have him come back and speak to that a little bit. Is that appropriate?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
One of the gentlemen who spoke, one of the residents, is raising his hand. Is it appropriate for him to come back up and speak?
Yeah, at the direction of the chair.
Okay, all right.
Do you have any more questions for us? Our engineer, he did a great job kind of going over everything and answering most of your questions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
Please go ahead and state your name and address for the record again.
Anthony McNoskey, 5108 Pleasant Run Road. Yes, there has been other restaurants there, and they have served alcohol. But it was not, when the Londoner was there, it was very busy. But the people came and they stayed, and there wasn't a lot of traffic in and out, constant moving all the time. Just to your
I
point.
get that, yes.
The west entrance, when Applebee's was there, and also when the Londoner was there, they agreed to put up shrubs. And they did. And the shrubs died, and they weren't replaced. But if you use that west entrance and you're coming out, shrubs that high cause a barrier from seeing the traffic that's coming from the highway around that corner. Shrubs will block the left-hand view. You can't see traffic coming until it's right upon you. So that's a safety issue. Just wanted to mention that to you. So I agree that I like your proposal of putting it down farther to the south of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So at this point, we have an addition of a concrete barrier and shrubbery along the northwest portion of the property is what I'm understanding. And also a review of the entrance off of Pleasant Run Road. That would definitely be an engineering and traffic review to look at that.
But it is, but I guess my question to that is, if they come back and say, you know, yes, that's feasibly a acceptable spot for a drive, then that's what I will vote no based on how it's laid out today. If they can make that change, then then I'm more inclined to vote yes. So how do you make that recommendation, is my point, is my question.
We're making a recommendation to council, and what it would be is we would add that to the PUD when it goes up, that we would like these things reviewed during the, council approval process, and then we go on,
It would be council.
then it's on council with those items, and we've notated it.
And if they change the entrance on
Don't get it.
Pleasant
I mean, I
Run, they
get
have
it,
to
but I
change
just don't.
the direction of dumpster as well.
Well, that
Can we
would-
see the,
I mean, the commission can propose several different
We
modifications.
can add as much stuff to it as we want.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah, but I guess again, it's just for argument's sake, and not the way it's different than saying, we'd like you to look at potentially changing the Pleasant Road entrance versus if you can't, then I'm not in favor of it. If you can, I am.
Right, so if, a motion could be made with those stipulations that they review that and present an alternative to the city council and leave it up to the city council. If you're not comfortable with that motion, you would vote how you decide to. If a motion here ends up failing or it is denied, the applicant still has the opportunity to appeal onto council.
Right.
And present the same request to the city council. So, I mean, I just throw that out there. I think they've heard the concerns. I think they will look at it, but if you're not comfortable enough to vote for something like that, then you would just vote how you feel appropriate today.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve ZC 19-014 with the stipulation that the screening on the Pleasant Run side be concrete, masonry, a solid barrier, as well as shrubs. And also that the engineers will look at relocating the Pleasant Run Drive to make it, let's see, just have them reevaluate the location of the Pleasant Run Drive and see if it can be moved to the south. Is that where we want to move it, to the south? Okay, that would be my motion then, to approve it with those stipulations.
Can I just clarify that or amend that
Yes,
potentially a little bit?
Please.
It's not, to me, it's not that they look at it, it's that if they say, again, I don't want to be too stubborn on this, but if whomever the powers that be come back and say, yes, it is acceptable to move the Pleasant Run Road entrance more in line with the entrance that currently goes to Chase Bank, I'm voting yes, okay? If they come back and say, no, the entrance has to stay where it's at, then I'm not as comfortable with it. So it's not just that they look at it, I would like it to be a little bit, if you guys are comfortable with it, word it a little differently, a little, with the stipulation that the wall I agree with, of aesthetically pleasing concrete brick barrier, and that the entrance into Pleasant Run be moved farther south. If those two things, so it's not just looking at it, but that we recommend that those two things happen.
Well,
Do you feel like if they can't relocate that entranceway, you want to scrap the whole thing? Is that what you're saying?
No, I wanted to look at another, not necessarily, like I said, in the last gentleman who spoke, I agree with what he's saying, but I think the village is never going to be what it was originally intended to be, unfortunately. Still a great place to live, but it's not going to be a mixed use with a lot of shopping and, some places went in years ago when I first moved here and they went out of business. So it's turned more into physician offices and things like that. So I do want to see it a business work there. I think a Chick-fil-A is a very acceptable business there, given it's on 26, and I'd like to see it work. But I also, like I said, I'm very sensitive to the concerns I had. If I lived across the street, I have the same concerns.
I feel the
And
same
so-
way.
so
I
I would
am
like to see-
totally sensitive to what you guys are objecting to and how you feel about it. I live behind commercial. It's quiet right now, but that could change on a dime, and I'm aware of that. So I totally get what you're saying and how you feel. I think there's a balance between that and what's going to be good for the city overall, and I feel like this Chick-fil-A is probably a really good thing to put in this location. If we can just kind of compromise and figure out this, you know, with the headlights, and I get the entrance, but I hate to see us, you know, make a demand that if they can't relocate that driveway because it's not going to work properly.
Well, the city council still have the ability to.
This body does not make demands, it makes
Well,
recommendations.
That's
Recommendation.
okay, but
Yeah.
what Matt was saying was he wants to do something more than recommend.
We're not
No,
gonna
it's
be
not
able to
that,
do
no.
that. We're not gonna be able to tie it back. It's-
That's not what
we-
I'm saying, though.
Yeah. Right.
In fairness, I'm saying that it's a more concrete recommendation
Yeah.
versus just looking at it.
Okay.
Our recommendation is to move that, and if at the end of the day they come back and they can't do it, well, then city council still has the right to vote on it. But I'd like the recommendation to be stronger that that entrance be moved farther south. That's all.
Understood.
Well, then I'll withdraw my motion, and you can make a motion.
Yeah.
So, again, I apologize for being stubborn on this, but my recommendation would be to approve with the stipulations that a more suitable, aesthetically pleasing brick concrete barrier be put up between the homeowner section of Pleasant Run Road, along with the shrubs be, on the Pleasant Run Road side of the wall, and that the entrance onto Pleasant Run Road be moved farther south, ideally in line or more in line with the entrance into Chase Bank, that entrance. That's how I would put the motion.
With that,
I got it.
do I have a second?
I second.
We'll take the vote now. Commissioner Moore? Aye. Commissioner Syed?
Aye.
Commissioner Holt?
Aye.
Teeson? Absent. Coke?
Aye.
Bevel?
Aye.
And Elms? Absent. Motion passes 5-0 with notations.
Yeah, so it is approval as presented, but with two modifications, that the screening for the drive-through parking area be both the masonry and the shrubs. And then second is to relocate the Pleasant Run Drive to the south, preferably to align with the Chase Bank Drive across the street, but as close as possible. So this is a recommendation from this commission. This will now move on to the city council. And so they will get this recommendation as part of their packet information. And so you'll be able to address this with them and, basically go through your arguments for or against trying to accommodate these.
All right, on to the next agenda item. Consideration of an SUP for a fence to extend into the required street side yard on Lot 20, Block 1 of the Creek Side at Colleyville Addition, located at 4708 Latour Lane, case ZC19-016. Staff?
Thank you. So this is another special use permit request for a fence to extend into the required street side yard here at 4708 Latour Lane. Here's an aerial photo of the site. This is part of the Creekside neighborhood development. The house is, I don't know if it's complete, but it is very close to being complete, if not complete already. It is currently zoned PUDR, Planned Unit Development Residential. As I stated, it is part of Creekside. It is designated for residential on the future land use map. So here's a pictometry photo of the house during its construction phase. I'm just going to identify, you can see the pretty substantial retaining wall there along the back as well as along the street side property. This is a view from the adjacent neighborhood. This identifies and it clearly shows that there is a perimeter subdivision fence around the adjacent neighborhood. There was this gate access that was accommodated for with the connection for the streets. I believe this is emergency access only at this time. This is the proposal. What they're requesting is that the fence be located on top of the retaining wall that I identified previously. They're proposing a 6-foot wrought iron fence to be on top of that wall, which is within that required front setback for this property. The planned unit development regulations authorize a 15-foot street side yard. This would be, I believe, I don't have the exact number. I think it's maybe 4 feet from the property line. I might be wrong on that. This is another exhibit to identify if this request is not approved. They would be authorized a 6-foot fence at the 15-foot build line. But regardless, we would have to have some type of safety railing on top of that retaining wall. The regulations in the Land Development Code authorize a 30-inch fence. It would have to be a wrought iron type fence, non-opaque. But there may be a safety requirement based on street design when you have that much of a drop-off that it might have to be the 36 inches as identified here. But we would have to have some type of safety barrier there to prevent people from falling off. Here are some photos provided by the applicant. So the fence actually has been constructed. It is a 6-foot wrought iron fence, again, on top of that retaining wall. The middle picture, you can see the retaining wall itself. It varies between 3 feet in height up to 6 feet. The photo on the right is the house across the street. That's also within the Creekside development. That was finished about a year ago. At that time, the Land Development Code did, and the interpretation at that time did allow for a wrought iron fence or a non-privacy fence to be located within that setback area. And so the intent was to match that house there. You can see it has a similar retaining wall situation there on that property, similar to this one. Under today's regulations, the existing language says that no fence shall extend into that required street side yard. And so they are requesting this special use permit, which is authorized as well as part of this section, requesting it to be on top of that existing retaining wall. Staff did send our notices out to all properties within 500 feet. We did not receive any letters formally at this time for this request. Staff does recommend denial of the request. It does not meet the technical requirements of the Land Development Code. And with that, I can answer any questions.
No questions?
Pretty straightforward presentation.
Yep. I believe we have the owner of the property here. You can come up here, state your name and address for the record, please.
Thanks for hearing me at the end of the night. I know everybody's pretty exhausted after that. I am. My name is Donald Miller. I'm the owner at 4708 Latour Lane. And that's the best picture to look at. We moved in September 16th, closed on August 30th. We weren't aware of this problem. I'm sure you guys get this, but like, we weren't aware. And and the fence contractor, I believe, is the one that made the application for us. And I think this is the best image to look at when you see that the other side of the property also has that. And most of my neighbors have come up to me and said, you know, what's going on and why is this going? The sign was out, they're asking me questions, and they're all like, well, we want it to be the same. And then on top of that, I'll add in that I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old boys, both of them, who already are slightly acrobatic, but trying to get more so. And I am concerned, as was mentioned, I think, in the pre-meeting, that there is a bit of a safety issue when it comes to having something on top of this. And while that is a closed to emergency vehicles only, you'd be surprised at the number of people think it's like a running hill to go up and down, and they will go up and down that street. And I'd like to just keep it how it is and how it was constructed. I'm concerned, I really am concerned about people falling off that thing. And I really don't think it would be necessary to have to like do it again and do something over again that's already been done. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I open the public hearing, any letters for or against received?
We did not receive anything for this item.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to open up the public hearing. No one's coming forward, no cards. I'm going to close the public hearing. And I'll open it up to commissioners' discussion.
Going on
Yeah.
first lot this time, but I would.
Anybody?
I would say, typically, I am not for asking for forgiveness versus permission route. And I do typically want to fall in line with what our code states. In this particular case, I do see, this is where the SUP does come into play because it is a unique property layout with retaining wall. And if I was a neighbor, I'd also want it to look like it looks across the street. And you can't take that down. That's what's put in before any code change, right? So given that, I'm in line to approve this, but I do want to state, do not, if anybody's watching, the ask for forgiveness versus permission route doesn't usually work for me, and I know other commissioners probably feel the same way. And if this was a different situation, it didn't have the retaining wall, the neighbor across the street didn't already have the same thing in place, I would probably vote to deny it, but given those circumstances, I think it's acceptable.
I share your views on that, you know, with just the sheer drop-off there, that would make it dangerous, in my opinion, you know, with that retaining wall.
What's the alternative? To put a little short fence on top of the retaining wall?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And
We authorize up to 30 inches,
Yeah.
but there may be a greater standard based on street design. There's manuals, and when you have drop-offs, it may require the 36 inches, or maybe even greater than that.
That seems a little silly.
It does, it really does. It's a very unique situation there, so.
For me, I am like Matt. I like to stick to the code and, you know, that way you're not setting a precedent and all those things. Nevertheless, this is a unique situation, and it definitely provides an element of safety that otherwise wouldn't be there. And to tear it out and put it and make it a smaller of the same thing, to me, wouldn't really make sense. So I'm more inclined to, this would be one exception I would definitely consider, but it seems the most logical.
Any further discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve case ZC 19-016.
And I'll second it.
Correct way to say this one, right?
Commissioner Moore, aye. Syed,
Aye.
Holt,
Aye.
Thiessen, absent. Cook,
Aye.
Bevel,
Aye.
Helms, absent. Motion passes 5-0. This meeting's adjourned.